God, I'm so busy. I have so much stuff to do. Let's just get right into this. I'm Max, that's Saib. Black Myth Wukong, or Wukong Black Myth. No, I think it's the other way. Black Myth Wukong, as developed by indie studio known as Game Science Studio. It was a game that was announced, I think, about a year ago, actually, back in August of 2020. And it sort of just dropped onto everybody's radar. I found out about it first through Yang Ya, famous gaming pundit on YouTube. And in case you guys don't know what it's all about, it's sort of like a Souls-type game where it's dodge roll and then try to attack the guy without getting hit, you know, elevate the difficulty. And then every once in a while, you'll fight a really awesome boss. Well, it's not being done by From Software. Like I said, it's being done by this other company. And the reason why it came onto everybody's radar was with that first trailer. It looked gorgeous. It's using Unreal Engine 5. It looks heavily detailed, just the amount of imagination that's going into the creature design and the world design. It looks thoroughly next gen, which is surprising because it is done by an indie studio. Well,
I believe the new terminology that the young kids are using these days is that it's banging.
Yes, it certainly looks banging, and it looks even more banging with this new trailer that released, I believe, today. I watched it this morning. It's 12 minutes long, and oh my god. Like, if this game is exactly what the trailer is promising us to be, it could be, like, I am loath to use the word epic, because it's used so often and so in such an exaggerated way by most people that use it. But this looks like the quintessential definition of the word epic. Saib, I will get into some more of my thoughts about it in a second, but just your quick reactions to this awesome trailer.
So, I mean, the first one was great. This one's great. I am not nearly as excited as you are because I've been watching a lot of trailers over the past few years and we don't even get like half of them. Like not even half of them to the scale that the trailer promises. And there's a couple of good examples of this. One is Wild, which is a title that was in the works for Sony.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was another, like, I mean, obviously CDPR, right? I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, the promise is great. I love the new technology. I love the direction that they're going in. But promises can be big and actual delivery is really hard. And so, and again, trailers are great. Like, I don't know if you've watched the trailers for Honkai Impact. Not the trailers, but like the animated like videos that they do, the animated story sections that they do. They're usually only like a few minutes long, but they're made like really high quality, like really like top tier animation quality, and it looks like, you know, really good hand-drawn anime, plus with some like really amazing like CG effects, like really amazing, not Berserker amazing. That wasn't really amazing. That was kind of like a nightmare, but they really up the volume of this stuff, and it looks great. The game, and you know, the gameplay. I mean, aside from it being a mobile game that you can play on PC, the just the general like and the gacha system, it's just not something I want to play. But the animations are great,
right? And
we've had that before with big titles. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of a difference here because this is made in Unreal 5, and so is the animations, so I've heard. Yeah. And I do know that everybody's favorite Mandalorian was filmed in basically I think it's Unreal 5 as well.
Yep.
Like it's like they have like the sets are like essentially digital. The stage, it's really amazing stuff. I don't want to sidetrack too much, but it's really, really cool. And you know, Unreal just keeps on pumping out this like really great content. But again, does that or will that transfer to the game? Are we going to get something as smooth as it looks, or is it going to be as good gameplay, or is it just going to be like, you know, there's a lot of Korean MMOs, a handful of Japanese ones too. They look great. You're like, wow, this is such a beautiful world. And then you stand there and you watch the NPCs. And the NPCs wander about like 1 meter away from where they're placed. And they just kind of wander back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And they don't do anything. Like, the world is not alive. It's a series of like essentially stages where you do combat. And then that's it. That's the extent of the gameplay. That's the extent of the living, breathing world, is basically nothing. And I mean, there's lots of, I mean, it's not just Korean games. Lots of studios do that because it's cheap and it's easy. and you don't have to write tons and tons of like really complex code. But that's unfortunately a confine of making the games really, really pretty. And I am worried that this game will be that, just go from room to room to room to room, where the enemies are on a very short reset leash and you just fight. You know, you get really cool fights, but that's the extent of the universe. You know, you maybe talk to like an NPC here or there. So I don't want to put a damper on things. I don't want to be a wet blanket, but I do want to remind everybody that we've had promises like this before very recently, and despite a lot of evidence and the developer really promising the moon, they end up falling short of like even getting to the top of the Empire State Building. So,
well, okay, I'll say two things in regards to what you just said. One where I'll agree with you, and one where I'll sort of offer a little bit more optimism. On the one hand, yes, it's an indie studio. Yes, we have seen people promise the moon before, particularly indie studios, people like No Man's Sky, and then everybody's just so amped for it, and then it comes out and it just falls far short of what we expected. So it's a good idea to maybe just keep your expectations in check. But on the other hand, I will say that when it comes to Souls-type games, unless you're trying to do something open world, like From Software is trying to do with Elden Ring, something like the structure of a Dark Souls, like an original Dark Souls game or a Demon Souls, is a little bit easier because the formula, it's still relatively fresh over a decade later. I would be just fine if Black Myth Wukong was like Dark Souls 1, where it's sort of like a contained open world, not really open world though, and you're traveling from one area to the next, just trying to take out all the main bosses. I would be totally okay with that because God damn, it'll look bloody gorgeous every single moment that I'm playing it. So as long as they stick to that formula and not try to venture too far beyond that and try to be greater than somebody like From Software, I think they'll be fine because of just the nature of what they're going for. So yeah, just because we have been disappointed a lot in the recent past especially, just keep your expectations in check. But I wouldn't say just get rid of your enthusiasm altogether. Still an awesome trailer. Let's just be happy with that, and we'll see how things shake out when the game eventually releases, if it ever releases. Okay, let's move on to the next one. What did we have next on the docket? Oh yes, Riot Games. Saib, you told me all about this. Well, you sent me this video from Bellular a few hours ago. You take the lead on this.
Yeah, so, well, just Riot, Blizzard's not the only people that have had a very big investigation into work practices.
Right.
Riot had it pretty bad about a little over a year or two ago, and things were really terrible. I want to point out that Ubisoft has a similar problem.
Yep.
That Naughty Dog has reported to have several similar problems. Naughty Dog is so bad that they basically, like, not just in the in the people don't know how to keep their hands to themselves, but also in just the general treatment of employees. It was so bad that everybody was told who was graduating from classes in schools and academies where they were teaching game development, whatever you do not go to work for Naughty Dog because it will kill your passion for gaming. It will destroy it. And they chewed through so many people in the development world, like in the computer world, that they ended up having to bring in people from Hollywood, and the people from Hollywood said it was one of their worst experiences developing or working on a project, from a number of sources, again, allegedly. So that's just a reminder that there's a big problem industry-wide, and it's really shocking because a lot of these companies net like, almost $2 billion a quarter. So, and Riot is up there. They make an immense amount of money. However, this $400 million problem lawsuit that they've had with their behavior in the past, they're trying to get it so that it's concluded sooner. They don't want to drag it out. And from what we've been receiving from numerous reports, seems to indicate that they've really turned their culture around there at Riot Games, and they don't have the same problems anymore. So that's a good thing, even though they're still in the middle of this lawsuit. But in about 2 years, it does appear as if they've turned things around significantly, which means that, and again, going on the reports of people like Bellular and other people that are much bigger, we seem to be hearing that things are overall improved at the company in pretty much every single way, and everybody is having a much easier time, and they're working on some really big titles. Now, if the big titles that they're working on come out and they do really, really well, that's just a reminder to everybody that this isn't an issue where it's like, oh, people are complaining too much. They should just sit down and do the work. Now, when you can't focus because you're too scared, too hungry, or too in fear of your position at work, you're not going to be a good worker. If you can't make enough money to feed yourself, you're not going to be a good worker. It really doesn't. If you don't have enough break time, you're not going to be a good worker. And hopefully, at some point, one of these companies that's completely changed the game, they're paying a lot more to everybody. Everybody from the entry level positions all the way up when you hit like management and stuff like that. If they're paying everybody a lot more and are actively interested in creating a good environment, lo and behold, they create the next one or two enormous games. Hopefully that will finally get it through these people's heads that no, you don't have to take advantage of your employees, create a hellhole and say, well, just get back to it, or you can't, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. That kind of absolute garbage. Maybe you'll think twice about saying that when you realize that people who do it right, who actually make a good product, who'd actually follow the original concepts of like good business practices, aka the original Mr. Ford, that maybe that will actually make you a household name. And walking away from that, aka like the current Ford, will create more and more problems for you down the road, and you will become less and less of a household name as your side of the market is eaten up more and more and more by people who are doing it right, or who are just doing it as just as bad as you, and nobody's getting the benefit of actual progressive technology and products. Like, wow, what a concept.
Yeah, it is certainly a step in the right direction. I hope that by making the culture at Riot Games a little bit more positive, inclusive, and less toxic, that what will happen is with the new games that follow games like League of Legends and Valorant, that they will be sort of game changers, ones that everybody wants to take on more and more. And I mean, they've already done that more already with League of Legends and Valorant, but imagine just how much better things will be once all the employees are happy and they aren't complaining all the time. But it's just a step. There are other things about their games that I'm not particularly fond of. Apparently, League of Legends is considered by many to be the most toxic of online games to play in terms of the community around it. And also Valorant.
It depends on what you're playing in League of Legends. It was for a long time toxic, but it really depends on what you're playing. From what I remember, it's been a few years since I was in there, and yes, it was extremely toxic. It was really bad. People just got into it, and then they would make it so that they had these like trial things where your conversations, if you were reported, your conversations would go up in a window, and then community members would judge you and dish out punishment. And it was a great idea and concept until you realize that some people were starting to like be even more toxic just so that they would end up on the list, just so that they could, people would talk about it or post screenshots of it and go, wow, look at this. Like it became like, they were making you infamous. And so like there's a lot of people apparently who really like infamy and who will decide to embrace that. Now, I had an idea in the early days of this. I wanted to make a video series where me and another chap spoke in British accents and just talked about particular things and then read quotes from them, but in a calm British voice, like, oh, don't you know how to play mid, you stupid person, and replacing all the swear words with like lighter words like stupid or person or something like that. And it's like, well, you don't know how to jungle, good sir. Yes.
So
and
you ruined my fun as recompense for your imagined slights.
Exactly. And I thought it would be kind of funny, but just like getting into it, the first kind of setting up a draft, people were horrible.
Yeah.
Just horrible. It was like I can't turn this into a funny thing because it's just some guy writing 40 lines of just the absolute most vile things you could imagine. And it's like, wow. Yeah. Wow. Like going into detail about things that you just cannot mention in polite company. And it's like, I can't fix this. So there is a lot of toxicity, but I think that's in general that kind of happens.
Yeah.
As far as like competitive sports or like competitive anything. I mean,
yeah, it's true. I just meant that especially in regards to League of Legends. That's just what I've heard, but you would know better because I've never played the game. It's just because it's so popular, you hear stories. And then of course with all the hefty microtransactions that go into Valorant, don't buy them. But nonetheless, let's just take the victories where they are. This is great news, and I hope that considering that this is happening with a lot of different gaming studios right now, that this sort of success will carry over to companies like Activision Blizzard, to companies like Ubisoft. We just got to make sure that we stay vigilant, and we've got to make sure that we're still applying the pressure without, of course, being toxic like these people were. Now, speaking of being toxic, that was the best one, best transition I could come up with. Let's move over to Apex Legends. So I know a lot of people that play Apex Legends. Apparently it's pretty good. And people generally like Respawn Entertainment. But unfortunately, there was a particular employee that worked for Apex Legends that said some kind of uncouth, toxic things. But he did it a long time ago. So the deal is, I think it was just a couple days ago, one of the developers for Apex Legends, a guy named Daniel Klein, he got taken out of his job because of these things that he said. I read some of them. They weren't cool, but I will say this. These are things that he said back in 2007, right? So that was 14 years ago. Plus, from what I understand and everything that I could dig up on this guy, it really seemed like he was doing everything that he could since this time to sort of make up for the person that he used to be. Now, you can sort of agree or disagree with the way that he was going about trying to promote diversity and inclusion in the workplace, particularly of women. But it seemed like in trying to do that, he was trying to make up for the person that he used to be and, the stuff that he put into these blog posts that he made. So what this sort of brings up is sort of a more philosophical discussion that I'd like to get your opinion on, Saib. These things did happen 14 years ago. He is trying to it seems like he has been trying to make amends for the things that he said, but it seems like despite that, no matter how hard he tries, it seems like nothing that he ever does will be enough. I'm just wondering, like, when it comes to statements, I would have to assume that there's room for forgiveness, right? Especially since it was so long ago.
No, there isn't room for forgiveness, not these days at least. This is the whole crux of a lot of social problems right now, is that there is no forgiveness. You can't be forgiven for accidentally cutting somebody off in a traffic lane, let alone saying something that was obviously terrible when you were 14, being a terrible teenager. And this is the one thing that I looked up right away. I wanted to see how old he was.
Yeah.
Because as far as I knew, well, I can't find that. The only thing I know is that most of his work started in 2008. Okay. So he started working professionally in 2008. Now that's for professional gaming companies, so he probably had been doing something before that, whether it's non-gaming work or perhaps some Q&A, but it's just like, I'm pretty sure that he was a fairly young person, 15 years ago. Like he may have been over 20. He may have been 18. I'm not really sure. I can't really place it. But again, you mentioned the concept of forgiveness is like, they were obviously kind of like trolly jokes that are not meant to be taken seriously, or somebody's like, oh, I'm super edgy, guys, like maybe not, I don't want to judge them one way or the other. But if we're destroying people's lives permanently for edgy jokes they made when they were 14, again, that's the kind of the nightmare situation, because you never grow up past that. You never get out of that. You are scarred for life, like marked for life, and you will be like, you'll be constantly destroyed for that every day that you wake up and try to do anything. And it's like, we've seen this happen in certain countries that go down these routes of like, let's have a struggle session where you're lambasted for having a blood guilt because your grandparents did something that isn't approved of. And it's like, that's a nightmare scenario, and that's really terrible to put on anybody. And if you think for a moment that won't come on you whenever it's convenient for particular people to do that, you got another thing coming, and it's probably going to come in the form of something really terrible in the future.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say is, like, obviously he stepped down, he apologized. I think in my mind, I'd be willing to, forgive, and let's see what he can do. I don't think he should be lambasted for the rest of his life, but I think that we are quickly entering a scenario where that is not no longer a viable or popular option of like, well, let's see if they could turn their life around. It used to be, I remember when, you know, an ex-con would, you know, get out of an ex-con program. You know, he would be graduated out of a program. He's been out of jail for like, you know, 5 years. He's been in a program that's helping them to readjust. And those people are oftentimes very good people.
Sure.
Because they put in the work. You know, they paid their debts to society, and then they even went further by getting into a program that taught them how to be a productive member of society. Those things are actually really good. And when you meet people who've been through that, they're often very humble. And they've got a lot of grace to them because it's been shown to them. And unfortunately, society has valued that less and less. And I think that that's sad, because if you paid your debt, you should have a chance at recovery and redemption. But I think that's something that we're going to be seeing a lot less of in the future.
Yeah. If you don't have grace, if you don't give people mercy, then what is inevitably going to happen with a lot of people is that they will just become resentful if they can't move forward in society and in life because of that one mistake they made when they were doing something stupid. It's not healthy. It's like you got to make a choice. To the people on Twitter that base their entire identity off of going after people for these stupid comments that they made over a decade ago. Is it better to just let it go and forgive them and, you know, keep an eye on them to make sure they don't do it again? Or is it better to just never forgive them and to, you know, sort of set an example for anybody else in the future to not do stuff like this? I think it's the former, because if you went with the latter, you would just be going after everybody after a certain amount of time, because the fact is, everybody, especially when they're young, has done or said something really, really stupid. And if you think that you're one of those people that is as pure as the driven snow and hasn't done anything wrong, I got news for you, okay? If you consider yourself to be one of those people and you're listening to this, let me tell you something, okay? You're a narcissist, and you might want to go speak to a psychologist, all right? So
or you're a Kardashian, because I don't know if you watched a lot of the Kardashian. I'm sure you did. The Kardashian legal system was nightmarish. It's like your trial will be you've been found guilty of being a traitor to the state. Your execution will be followed immediately after your trial tomorrow. That's the kind of system that, again, is like a lot of people are excited. Yay, let's do this. Let's teach all these people lessons. But it's like, there's a reason why a fair and impartial jury system, you know, is important, because when that's turned on you, and it will be at some point, you or somebody you know will have that system turned on you. It doesn't matter if you're guilty or not. So just a casual warning.
Yeah, just be careful out there, guys, and just be wary. Like, you know, you wonder why I don't show my face or why Saib doesn't show his face. That's why. It's because we're careful about this stuff, and, you know, people can be really, really cruel and, you know, go after you for the most tepid of reasons. I know, I've experienced it. Try to be conscious and protect yourself. All right. Let's move on to the next story. So I'm going to pass this off to you because you're the Blizzard guy here.
Way back a long time ago, peer-to-peer games were, you'd have multiple computers in a house or a building, and you would plug them all into this little thing called a LAN device that would allow them to all communicate all at the same time. This was before internet was available on most computers and in most homes. And you would get together with a bunch of friends and plug in computers to each other so that you could play over a localized network. All current day modems have this built into their system. So they all have they're all built into the system. So yeah, you hop on the game and you are connected to your brother's computer through the local network, so you can play a game together offline without any internet connection. I remember this distinctly well with Diablo 2. During some college time at the time, I went to a house that was built in a very far away place, and it was me and another guy, and we didn't really have anything to do aside from the fact that we both brought computers and had a LAN thing set up, and we played through Diablo 2 during my week off. Nice. So that is what, you know, they have removed from the game. They don't want you to play online with your friends in a private setting. All of your play must be online on their servers so that they can clock every second of it and monitor every second of it and see exactly what you're doing every second. This is another step towards all gaming will be online. All gaming will be at the mercy of the game developers' servers. And when they choose that they do not want you to play that game anymore, they remove them or shut them down, and then you have a paperweight in the form of a game disc, or we're moving slowly towards the thing where it's like you don't even have anything physical that represents the video game. You know,
yeah, DRM all the time
for forever now. But yeah, so you just cannot play that game if the servers do not exist. So that's kind of frightful. Like that's honestly very frightful. And I've been so against this for so long that, you know, we as PC gamers need to stand up and say, no, if I buy a game offline and then, you know, the apocalypse happens and I'm set up in a bunker with a little bit of power and, you know, 40 years worth of crackers, I want to just sit there and play a game. I don't want to have to be like, I don't want to look at the screen and goes unable to connect to server. And then you're stuck playing like what, solitaire? Like, I think that's a really terrible idea.
Yeah.
And I think the people who are pushing this should be punished by people not engaging with their products at all. My humble opinion, of course.
Right. They've been sort of, the entire gaming industry has sort of been trying to push towards this for a really long time. They were especially trying to do that back towards the beginning of the last console generation, especially with the Xbox One. That was a huge controversy back then because they were trying to do everything online. And then everybody's like, well, okay, so what's the point? Why don't we all just go buy PCs then? If that's the only option that we have right now. So maybe if people continue to do this, I don't think that the consoles are going to go back and try that crap again after the fallout that Microsoft almost suffered way back when. I think what this might mean is that people will just continue to buy consoles so that way they don't have to worry about that. They could just have their friends over, sit each other down on the same couch, or or even do the LAN thing. There are people that still do LAN parties. It's not all that uncommon. I still see people post about them in my social media feeds, getting their old Xboxes together and playing Halo. It's a lot more common than you might think. And it's a real shame that in terms of trying to bring back this original experience with Diablo 2 that's so beloved that they wouldn't try to keep it as true to the original experience while updating where necessary for people that have stuck with that franchise for so long. But then again, maybe we shouldn't be surprised because after all, it is Blizzard. So I guess all we can really hope is that with this game coming out that it will be better, at least better than Warcraft 3 Reforged was, which I think hopefully it seems like that's going to be the case. I don't know. I'm not following it. Is it?
Well, I mean, time will tell.
Okay. Well, anyways, that's just the deal with that, guys. Just when this sort of thing happens to your particular video game, just make sure that obviously you do it in a civil way. Just make sure that you let the developers know however you can that you don't appreciate this change. And, if it continues to happen more and more, just like Saib said, don't engage with their products. Don't buy them. Send them a message because that's the only way they're going to listen. All right. Now, this might be the second to the last stories because you did say you had that one Skyrim thing that you wanted to bring up.
It's really short. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together.
And welcome to the stage.
Welcome to the stage. Skyrim for the 8th. Yes, you heard it. 8th time it's being released. For the 8th time. 9th if you count the one for Amazon. Alexa. Woo! Everybody. 8 releases. Ah, yes. Yes. And if you bought all of them, I feel so sorry for you. Yes, the 8th release, technically 9th, release of Skyrim. Yeah, they've added fishing, better graphics, supposedly more stability, and they've curated 500 of the top most played mods on the Creation Engine, and they've combined them in a pre-built safe package that you can just launch and play.
Okay.
So it's very interesting. I like the concept. Now I hammed it up a little bit. I actually think this is fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
I honestly do. Why? Am I being a shill for Bethesda? No, it's because this content, those 500 mods, were created by modders and people who got paid for their contribution to the game. I think that is something that we should encourage. I'm not saying you should go out and buy it by any means, but if you have, north of 500 hours in Skyrim, I think you're going to get a lot of play out of this. Because I've got north of 3,000 hours in Skyrim, and now I haven't played it because I've been very, very, very busy with my book, but I haven't played it for the last year. But I am eagerly anticipating. I still have like a lot of my favorite mods saved on Nexus, and I go back there and I look at the progression of some of them, and I'm like, I can't wait for this. This guy's been working on this mod for 4 years. When he's finally done it, it's going to be amazing. And it's not just that; it's also for Fallout and some really amazing projects going on over at Fallout. And unlike certain other companies who send lawyers and thugs to threaten you and your spouse should you dare mod their game, with just a mod that is free to play for people that drives more engagement back to their company. Yeah, they don't do that. Bethesda doesn't do that. They could, but they don't. And they've made it clear that modding is something that they view as somewhat sacred. Obviously not enough to package it up and sell it. But again, it's like in a world where there's 3 reactions to player modding. One is you've got the companies who go, I don't care. We're not going to support it. We're not going to help it. And if it gets too big, we're going to casually ask you to stop with some lawyers. Then the second reaction is they send lawyers hunting after you the minute that you even state that you're planning on working on a mod. And if you host a mod site for the mods to be, put on the internet for, you have thugs beating down your door at 3 a.m. saying, if you don't remove this from the internet, we're gonna make sure that you're waking up with some fishes. Now, whether or not they actually carried that out, I don't know. But there's those 2 reactions, or there's Bethesda, which is, yes, we love mods. Make as many as you want. We don't care if you're gonna make it with Thomas the Tank or a giant.
Or with Randy, the Macho Man Savage, coming out of the dragon's mouth.
I was going to mention some more of their adult mods, but yeah, you're sure, the Savage stuff. Yeah, I pick the side that allows some freedom.
Yeah.
Again, people hate the Bethesda store. They don't like the creators curation thing. But, a certain LL place is continuing to run despite having some very, 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 very spicy content over there. And Bethesda doesn't run around trying to shut them down. So I am always for free speech. I always think that free speech should be protected, and I view mods very much like free speech because I created a mod for Fallout 4. It's one of the biggest mods there. I worked with a Thuggy. Thuggy is one of the best mod creators there. I did a lot of writing for the mod, and yes, it is amazing. He does amazing work. All of the modders that I know and I have talked to over the years have always doing amazing work. We interviewed Caliente of the CBE body mods for Skyrim and Fallout.
I thought you were about to say the CCP. Like, what?
Yeah, no.
I know what you're talking about.
I respect these people, and I think that their work is valuable to the gamosphere environment that is gaming. And I think that this is very important. So while I'm going to have a little fun poking at Bethesda, I'm also going to say that I stand by them doing this because this encourages more player-created content, and this doesn't demonize them. And I think this is perfectly good, and this is having a great impact on games that I love that are coming out, such as Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
So I really, really love it, and I've got to say that as much time as we have difficulty with Bethesda, I honestly think that for now, currently, they are one of the best studios because they do give you that freedom. Yeah, they've had mess-ups, but they've also apologized for them. And like we've said, that whole forgiveness thing, Todd Howard came out and said there was not anything that they didn't mess up with 76. They messed up in every way possible, and they felt terrible, and they apologized as much as you legally can apologize in the United States without getting sued to death. And even then, somebody tried to sue them because he admitted fault.
Yeah.
So the fact that they apologize, the fact that they do this kind of stuff, again, they're a company, they want to make money. Microsoft wants to make its penny. I'm okay with that if this encourages Microsoft to allow modding to continue into the future, because modding is freedom, and it's more important than most people realize.
And it just promotes the longevity of great games like Skyrim. Before I got a PC, I bought Skyrim Special Edition for the Xbox One. And the reason why is because I didn't have the money, obviously, to buy Skyrim on the PC so that I could mod the crap out of it like I do now. And it was great because playing it on the Xbox One with those mods that I could download, it was a lot of fun. I couldn't believe how good Skyrim could look so many years later, and being able to do all these new things like the Open Cities mod or the Live Another Life mod, the Parthenax Dilemma mod. It was so much fun. And the fact of the matter is, not a whole lot of people have the type of money to invest in a good graphics card and a CPU and mod the crap out of Skyrim like so many people do, like putting 1,000 mods on their mod list. And having something like what they're releasing with this new version of Skyrim, especially with the next generation of consoles, would be a godsend to a lot of these people. So I'm all for it. You don't have to buy it again. I mean, if you're like me inside where you do have it for the PC, it's pretty much unnecessary. But it's great for all those who don't have that option. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to the Maximum News Show. Listen, if you want an audio version of this podcast, look into the description box below and check out my Patreon page. You can can get this audio version at the lowest possible tier. It's just at $1 a month Canadian. That's less than $1 American. If you support us that way, you support both Saib and I in the creation of this podcast, as well as the Disability Channel, who are kind enough to host it. And also, of course, I'd like to thank Saib, as always, for doing this show with me and offering, lovely ideas and his insight. Saib, do you just want to tell people very quickly where they could find you online?
At the Triple S League. That's triple, the word triple, S, the letter, and then league, like how you normally spell league. We are on Twitter. You can tweet at me, but I take very long times to respond there. YouTube is our best spot, and we have a Tuesday and a Saturday live stream if you want to catch us there and chat with me or the lovely Moon or the intelligent Ash, who keeps me in check most of the time.
Thank you so much, guys, and until we do this again next week, I want to remind you, as per usual, stay yellow.